Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab.
And welcome to the Deep Dive.
Today we're jumping into a topic that's, it's everywhere in our connected world. And it's something you might definitely come across if you're practicing your English, maybe for IELTS listening tasks, for instance, travel and tourism.
Absolutely. And, it's so much more than just packing a suitcase. It's this massive, really complex global thing. We've got all this great information here, lots of detail, and our plan today is to sort of unpack it all.
Yeah, peel back the layers a bit, see what makes this huge industry work, and importantly, what its real impacts are, the good and maybe the not so good.
Exactly. Think of this as your shortcut to getting a really solid handle on it, because it affects everything: economies, cultures, the planet.
And us, how we see the world, how we grow.
Right. So we'll be looking at its economic clout, how it shapes places and people, its environmental footprint, technology's role, the whole picture.
Okay, let's dive in then. When we talk about travel and tourism's impact, where do we even begin? The material makes it pretty clear from the get-go that the economic side is just enormous.
It really is. It's described as a major engine for growth globally. And the numbers, well, they speak for themselves, don't they?
They really do. I mean,
Yeah.
The scale is kind of mind-boggling. The info we have suggests that back in 2019, before things changed for a bit, this whole sector was responsible for about 10.4% of the global GDP.
Wow.
Yeah, gross domestic product. So the total value of everything produced worldwide, for one industry to be over a tenth of that.
That's massive. It just shows how interconnected everything is.
And how does that money actually flow in? It's not just one thing, is it?
No, not at all. It's coming from everywhere. I mean, every time someone, a tourist, books a hotel, pays for a flight or a train,
Eats out, visits an attraction.
buys souvenirs, takes a tour.
Shit.
Yeah, all of those little transactions, they add up. They create these, what the material calls revenue streams, lots of different streams pouring into the economy.
And you really see that concentrated in certain places, right? Where tourism isn't just part of the economy, it is the economy almost.
Precisely. Countries like Spain or Thailand, the UAE, tourism is absolutely fundamental for them. It's a primary driver.
The material highlights Dubai, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
It links its whole tourism boom to those iconic landmarks. Like the Burj Khalifa isn't just, a skyscraper.
It's a magnet.
Exactly. It pulls in visitors, and then this huge hospitality sector springs up around it. Hotels, restaurants, entertainment. And it's a whole ecosystem built on attracting people.
And it's not just the direct spending from tourists either. The material points out that tourism often acts as a catalyst for, wider development.
How so?
Well, it attracts foreign investment, money coming in from other countries to build new resorts, maybe improve airports, things like that.
Oh, okay. So bigger picture stuff.
Yeah, and it often forces upgrades to infrastructure, roads, public transport, utilities, because you need them to handle the visitors, which sometimes can benefit locals too.
Right. So it's drawing in serious capital, not just pocket money from tourists.
Definitely. It's about generating significant income, bringing in foreign exchange earnings, that's money from other countries, and ideally helping a place diversify its economy. Though sometimes the lack of diversification is the problem because of tourism. We'll probably get to that.
Okay, so huge income, major investment.
Yeah.
But what about the people, the jobs? That must be a massive part of the economic picture too.
Oh, absolutely critical. Tourism is a colossal job creator, and it supports such a wide range of roles. It's quite amazing when you think about it.
It's not just the obvious ones, like hotel staff or tour guide.
Not even close. You've got the people cleaning rooms, the chefs, the waiters, the bus drivers, taxi drivers, pilots, train conductors.
People making crafts to sell.
Exactly. Artisans, farmers growing food for the hotels, laundry services, security, admin staff. The list just keeps going. It creates this really broad spectrum of jobs.
And that's particularly important in some parts of the world, I imagine.
Hugely important in developing nations. Places like Kenya, Indonesia are mentioned. Tourism can offer vital employment, often for people who might not have, say, high levels of formal education. It can be a genuine route out of poverty.
It gives people economic power they might not otherwise have.
Right. Look at the example of safari tourism in Tanzania. It's not just the guides. It's the rangers protecting the wildlife, the trackers, the lodge staff, the drivers, even cultural performers. Thousands of local jobs directly linked to people coming to see the animals.
Wow. So it provides income, skills, helps people support themselves.
Yeah, we talk about job creation, economic empowerment, supporting local entrepreneurship, but it's worth remembering, as the material points out, a lot of these jobs can be seasonal.
Ah, right. tied to the tourist season.
Yeah.
So not necessarily year-round stability.
That can be a challenge, yes. And beyond the direct jobs, there's that infrastructure point again. Tourism often drives development.
Like needing better airports and roads because more people are coming.
Exactly. You need to handle the flow. Singapore's transport system is given as an example super efficient, partly because it needs to move millions of tourists smoothly as well as residents. It shows how visitor needs can push national investment.
I sense there's a but coming. Is it always a good thing?
Well, that's the tension, isn't it? This dual perspective comes up a lot. While tourism can spur useful development, it can also create strain and inequality.
How so?
Think about resource allocation. Do the new fancy roads only lead to the tourist resorts? Is all the investment poured into the tourist zones while local neighborhoods maybe lack basic services?
Ah, I see. So public money might follow the tourist dollar, potentially leaving locals behind.
It's a risk. You get this impressive infrastructure investment and urban development in some areas, but you have to ask, who is it really benefiting most? Is the resource allocation fair? It can create real disparities.
Okay, that's a critical point. And one more thing on the economic front, the risks involved. It sounds powerful, but is it stable?
That's the Achilles heel, really. Heavy reliance on tourism makes an economy very vulnerable.
Vulnerable to what?
External shocks. Things you can't predict or control. A natural disaster, earthquake, hurricane, tsunami, a health crisis, a pandemic, political instability, conflict.
Things that stop people traveling.
Instantly. Tourist numbers can just collapse overnight. And if tourism is your main source of income, as well.
COVID-19 must be the ultimate example of that.
Absolutely devastating for tourism-dependent economies. The material uses the Maldives as a stark example. Tourism is like over 60% of their entire GDP when flights stopped.
Disaster.
Complete economic crisis. It just showed how fragile that reliance can be.
Which brings us back to that idea of diversification.
Exactly. You need economic diversification. You can't have all your eggs in the tourism basket because that basket can be easily dropped by global events. Building economic resilience means having other sectors to lean on when those external shocks hit. It's a constant balancing act for many places.
Okay, wow. So the economic impact is huge, complex, powerful, but also potentially fragile. Let's shift gears. Travel isn't just about money. It changes cultures too, right?
Oh, profoundly. This is where things get really interesting and honestly sometimes quite tricky. Because travel is fundamentally about people from different backgrounds encountering each other.
Which leads to cultural exchange.
Ideally, yes. It facilitates that intercultural dialogue. It exposes travelers to different traditions, languages, foods, ways of thinking, things completely outside their usual experience. It can really break down barriers and stereotypes.
Like seeing a festival firsthand.
Yeah, exactly. Experiencing something like Diwali in India or maybe La Tomatina in Spain, it's totally different from just reading about it. It connects people, visitors get a real glimpse, and locals maybe see their traditions appreciated. It fosters mutual understanding.
Or the example of the Japanese tea ceremony. It's more than just watching, it's participating.
Right, it's an immersive experience. You're learning about philosophy, aesthetics, social customs. Directly, it's moments like that cultural immersion that really broaden your horizons.
So it helps with intercultural exchange, global awareness, appreciating heritage. Sounds very positive.
It can be. And tourism can also play a really direct role in actually preserving cultural heritage.
How does that work? Through the money it brings in.
Largely, yes. The revenue from tourism, like entrance fees, can be absolutely vital for maintaining historical sites, ancient monuments, even keeping traditional crafts or performances alive.
Like the big UNESCO World Heritage Sites, Machu Picchu, Angkor Wat.
Those are prime examples. The fees tourists pay often go straight into conservation funding, archaeologists, repairing structures, protecting the sites from erosion or decay. Honestly, without that tourist money, some incredible places might just crumble.
What? Again, I feel a tension here.
Yeah.
Doesn't having lots of people visit these places also cause problems?
That's the paradox. Huge numbers of visitors, heavy foot traffic. It physically wears down ancient stones. Crowds can change humidity levels inside old buildings. The sheer pressure can damage fragile structures.
Venice comes to mind.
Venice is a classic, tragic example. Millions of tourists, huge cruise ships. It puts immense strain on the city's sinking foundations. They need the tourist income for cultural conservation, for upkeep, but the tourism itself is contributing to the problem.
So you need sustainable tourism practices to manage that, to combat the effects of over-tourism.
Absolutely. It's a constant challenge. And the impact isn't just physical. There's the risk of, well, cultural erosion, commodification.
What do you mean by that? turning culture into a product.
Kind of, yeah. When there's intense pressure from mass tourism, destinations might start simplifying or changing their traditions to make them more palatable or entertaining for tourists.
Losing the original meaning.
Potentially. The example given is indigenous dances in Bali, perhaps being shortened or altered for tourist shows. They might lose their deeper spiritual context and just become a performance, a commodity.
And stereotyping, too. Reducing a whole culture to a few cliches.
That's another risk. Marketing might focus on simplistic images like, say, portraying everyone from a country wearing a specific hat that's not actually common, or only showing one type of music. It's cultural dilution, a loss of authenticity, turning richness into caricature.
That doesn't sound good. But is there any upside? Can tourism ever help revive traditions?
Yes, sometimes it can. That's the other side of the coin. If tourists create a new demand for something traditional that was maybe dying out.
Like traditional crafts.
Exactly. The material mentions traditional weaving in Guatemala. Tourist interest created a market, giving artisans an income and an incentive to keep those skills alive to pass them down. It can breathe new life into fading practices. That's cultural revitalization.
Okay, so it can be a lifeline. But another caveat.
There's always a caveat, isn't there? Even that revitalization can tip into over-commercialization. Artisans might start focusing on quantity over quality, speed over traditional methods, just to meet tourist demand.
So the craft itself might change, driven by profit rather than tradition.
Right. The focus shifts from the value of the traditional craftsmanship to just commercialization. So yes, it can revive things, but the market forces can subtly alter the tradition itself. It's complex.
Definitely complex. Okay, so culture is impacted in all these intricate ways. What about the environment? That feels like another huge area.
It is, and it's arguably one of the most critical challenges the industry faces right now. The environmental footprint of travel is significant.
How does it manifest? What are the main problems?
Well, the most direct is environmental degradation at the destination. Putting lots of people into often sensitive natural areas inevitably causes strain.
Like pollution, litter.
Yes, pollution from transport, litter left behind, sometimes direct habitat destruction as areas are cleared for resorts or infrastructure. Wildlife behavior can be disrupted. We see this in popular natural spots worldwide.
Places like the Great Barrier Reef or Mount Everest.
Both are facing major challenges linked to tourism, reef damage, pollution, litter at Everest Base Camp. It's serious. And Bali, again, the sheer number of visitors leads to beach pollution, strains water resources, impacting locals and ecosystems.
So we talk about the ecological footprint. Over-tourism causing resource depletion. It sounds quite damaging.
It can be, which is why careful management is so vital. But just like with culture, there's also a potential positive role for tourism and conservation.
Through things like ecotourism.
Exactly. Ecotourism is specifically designed to use tourism revenue to fund conservation and raise awareness.
Like the gorilla trekking example in Rwanda.
That's a powerful one. Those expensive permits directly fund anti-poaching patrols, habitat protection, and local community projects linked to conservation. It creates a direct economic reason to protect the gorillas and their environment.
And national parks rely on tourist fees too, right?
Many do, like Yellowstone in the US. Entrance fees are crucial for managing the park, protecting biodiversity, maintaining trails. So sustainable tourism can support biodiversity preservation and provide vital conservation funding.
Okay, so there's that potential upside. But what about the travel itself? Getting there? Flying?
Yes. That's the elephant in the room, environmentally speaking. Carbon emissions.
Air travel mainly.
Air travel is a big one, yes.
Yeah.
And large cruise ships, too. They contribute significantly to global carbon emissions. A single long-haul flight can be a huge chunk of someone's annual carbon footprint. Multiply that by millions of travelers.
It adds up fast.
It really does. And it raises tough ethical questions, doesn't it? About how much we fly, how often in an age of climate change. We need climate change mitigation efforts, more sustainable transport options. Yeah. It's a massive challenge.
But can travel also make people more aware of environmental issues?
It can, definitely. That's another positive angle. It can be a powerful educational tool.
Wow.
Well, visiting incredible natural places, seeing fragile ecosystems, maybe witnessing the impacts of climate change or pollution firsthand.
Yeah.
That can really hit home. Participating in eco-tours that explain conservation efforts can be very effective.
Like the Costa Rica example, highlighting rainforest preservation.
Exactly. It connects people emotionally to the environment, helps them understand why protection is vital. It fosters environmental awareness, encourages more eco-conscious travel. It becomes a form of conservation education.
So another double-edged sword. Huge environmental challenges, but also some potential for positive impact through funding and awareness. Let's move on to the social side. How does tourism affect the communities people visit?
Again, it's a mix of positives and negatives, often happening simultaneously. On the plus side, tourism definitely boosts global connectivity.
Building bridges between people.
Yes, on a very personal level. Travel facilitates those social connections across borders. People meet, interact, form friendships, understand each other better.
Like student exchanges or big international events.
Things like student exchanges, international festivals, the Olympics, world expos, they bring diverse groups of people together. It fosters social cohesion, promotes a sense of global citizenship, builds those cross-cultural relationships. It makes the world feel a bit smaller and more connected.
That sounds great. But what's the downside? How can it strain communities?
Well, simply having huge numbers of temporary visitors pour into a place, especially residential areas, can be very disruptive for locals.
Noise, crowding.
Noise, crowding, traffic congestion, yes. But also, critically, it often drives up the cost of living, especially housing.
Like in places such as Venice or Barcelona, where apartments get turned into tourist rentals.
Exactly. The material mentions the impact of short-term rentals. They can take housing off the long-term market, pushing up rents and property prices, making it unaffordable for local residents, sometimes forcing them out.
That's gentrification driven by tourism.
It can be a major factor, yes, leading to community displacement, overcrowding for those who stay, and understandably, social tension between locals and tourists. It's a really difficult, sensitive issue in many popular cities.
Are there positive social impacts, maybe for specific groups?
Yes, potentially. Tourism can sometimes empower marginalized communities like indigenous groups.
How?
By providing income opportunities through things like cultural tours run by the community or selling traditional handicrafts directly to visitors. Community-based tourism initiatives can give them economic leverage.
The Maasai communities in Kenya are mentioned as benefiting from some projects.
Right. It can lead to genuine economic empowerment, give these groups more agency, and it's a big but, it has to be managed ethically.
Risk of exploitation again.
Yes. If the profits don't flow back fairly to the community, or if their culture is misrepresented, it becomes cultural exploitation, not empowerment. You need ethical tourism practices, fair trade principles.
And can tourism sometimes just make existing social divides worse?
Unfortunately, yes. You can see stark disparities. Wealthy tourists enjoying luxury resorts, while the local workers staffing those resorts might be on very low wages facing poor conditions.
The material even mentions really awful things like child labor in some tourist areas.
It touches on those extreme ethical concerns, yes. It highlights how tourism can sometimes deepen social inequality and lead to labor exploitation if not carefully regulated and monitored. It really underscores the need for inclusive tourism models that benefit everyone fairly.
Okay, that's a lot to take in across the economic, cultural, environmental, and social spheres. Now, something that's changing everything is technology. How is that reshaping travel?
Oh, fundamentally. The digital transformation in travel over the last, say, 20 years is just staggering.
How we book things, mainly.
That's a huge part of it. Online booking platforms, Expedia, Booking.com, TripAdvisor are mentioned travel apps on our phones, comparison sites. They've made planning so much easier, more accessible.
And virtual reality for previews.
Yeah, VR is starting to let you sort of try before you buy, explore a hotel room, check out an attraction view. It definitely increases convenience.
Is there a downside to all this tech?
Well, the material suggests maybe a reduction in human interaction during planning. It's more automated, less talking to travel agents or locals for advice beforehand. So this digital transformation offers user-friendly interfaces and virtual tourism options, but maybe loses some personal touch.
And social media. That must be a massive influence now.
Huge. Platforms like Instagram, TikTok, they are powerful drivers of travel trends. People see a beautiful picture or video, and they want to go there.
The Instagrammable spot phenomenon.
Exactly. Specific viewpoints in Santorini, or that one swing in Bali. Places go viral, and suddenly they're swamped with people trying to get the same shot.
Which links straight back to over-tourism, right?
Directly. Social media influence is now a key part of destination marketing, but it can rapidly overwhelm places, causing environmental strain and disruption. It adds another layer to tourism's footprint.
But can technology also help solve some of these problems?
Yes, that's the hopeful side. There's a lot of innovation aimed at sustainability.
Like what?
Electric vehicles for transport within destinations, research into sustainable aviation fuels, using sensor technology, the Internet of Things, to monitor crowds or resource use in real time.
Smart tourism.
That's the term, yeah. Cities like Amsterdam are using tech to manage tourist flows better, maybe divert people from overcrowded areas, optimize public transport based on demand. Using green technology and data for better crowd management could really help.
And artificial intelligence, where does that fit in?
AI is being used more and more for personalization.
Like chatbots answering questions.
Chatbots, yes, but also sophisticated algorithms that analyze your past trips, your searches, your preferences, and then suggest tailored itineraries or activities just for you.
Sounds efficient.
Very. But again, there's that question. If AI plans everything perfectly for you, are you losing the joy of discovery, the serendipity, the authentic experience that comes from figuring things out yourself?
Does too much automation make travel less real?
It's a debate. Artificial intelligence enables personalized travel and automation, but maybe at the cost of some authentic experiences. Something to think about.
Okay, so beyond all these big picture impacts, what about us, the individuals who travel? How does it change us?
This is often the most tangible benefit for people, isn't it? Travel really does broaden perspectives.
How see? By challenging our assumptions.
Exactly. It directly confronts stereotypes you might have. Experiencing different cultures, different ways of life, different values firsthand. It just naturally makes you more open-minded, more empathetic. Living abroad, or even just navigating a completely unfamiliar place, builds adaptability.
Like the examples of backpacking in Southeast Asia or visiting India, seeing different ways people live.
Yes, it exposes you to different community structures, different ideas about resilience or spirituality, things you might never encounter otherwise. It gives you a new lens on the world and your own life. It boosts cultural awareness, spurs personal growth, gives you a global perspective.
And it's good for well-being, too. Taking a break.
Definitely. The therapeutic benefits are real. Escaping routine, reducing stress, whether it's through adventure or relaxation. Travel can be incredibly restorative for mental health.
Hiking in Patagonia, yoga retreats in Bali. Those examples sound pretty good for well-being.
They do. It's about enhancing well-being, maybe finding some self-discovery, building mental resilience. It's not just frivolous. It can be genuinely beneficial for health.
And what about skills? Do we actually learn practical things?
Absolutely. Travel constantly forces you to problem solve. Your flight gets canceled, you get lost, you need to communicate without a shared language. You have to adapt and figure things out.
Builds confidence.
Hugely. Navigating a foreign city alone, learning a few basic phrases, managing a budget in a different currency. It all builds practical skills and self-reliance. The material mentions solo travel specifically for boosting independence and decision-making. It's real-world skill development.
Okay, so lots of personal benefits. Now, does tourism affect all places equally? Or does it depend on where you go?
It varies quite significantly. Looking at regional perspectives really highlights this.
Like in developed countries, UK, Australia.
Right. In developed nations, tourism usually supports already complex economies. They have sophisticated industries. Their biggest challenge is often managing the success dealing with over-tourism in popular spots.
So places like London using congestion charges to manage traffic, which includes tourist traffic.
Exactly. It's often about tourist management, urban planning, trying to maintain quality of life alongside a busy tourism sector within a relatively stable economy.
And developing nations, Vietnam, Nepal.
For them, tourism is often much more central to basic economic growth, job creation, poverty reduction. It's seen as a vital engine.
But they face different challenges.
Often, yes. Infrastructure might be less developed, making it harder to cope with large numbers. Environmental regulations might be weaker. Nepal's trucking industry is a classic example. Crucial income for mountain communities, but causing real strain on fragile Himalayan ecosystems.
So they're focused on economic upliftment, but struggling with infrastructure strain and trying to achieve sustainable development.
That's often the dynamic, yes. Balancing growth with protection is harder with fewer resources.
And then there are island nations, Maldives, Fiji. They seem uniquely reliant.
Extremely reliant. Their economies are often almost entirely built on tourism, which makes them incredibly vulnerable.
Vulnerable to economic shocks like we discussed, but also climate change.
Critically vulnerable to climate change. Rising sea levels directly threaten their beaches, their land, the very foundation of their tourism appeal. Saltwater contamination of fresh water is another huge issue.
Wow. So for them, it's about climate vulnerability, extreme tourism dependence, and environmental sustainability is almost an existential issue.
For many, yes, it's incredibly precarious.
Okay. So given this incredibly complex picture,
Yeah.
the good, the bad, the opportunities, the risks across all these areas, how we travel clearly matters a lot, which brings us to ethical tourism.
Yes, this is about making conscious choices as travelers. It's about respecting local cultures, minimizing your negative impact on the environment, and trying to ensure your money benefits the local community.
What does that look like in practice?
It could mean choosing locally owned guest houses over international chains, buying souvenirs directly from artisans, being mindful of water and energy use, respecting local customs and dress codes, avoiding activities that harm wildlife. It's about responsible travel, community support, making eco-conscious choices.
What about voluntourism? Combining travel with volunteering.
It's a popular idea, often with great intentions, teaching English, helping build something. But the material urges caution.
Why? Can it be harmful?
If it's poorly managed, yes. It might take jobs from locals or involve unskilled volunteers doing potentially shoddy work. It can sometimes create dependency or even exploit vulnerable situations if not done in genuine partnership with the community.
So you need to research programs carefully, ensure they're ethical.
Absolutely. Ethical volunteering is key, focusing on real community impact and avoiding those exploitation risks. Good intentions aren't enough.
And animal welfare is another big ethical area.
Huge. Activities like elephant riding, swimming with captive dolphins, visiting unethical zoos. These raise serious concerns about how animals are treated for entertainment.
So the alternative?
Choosing genuine sanctuaries that focus on rescue and rehabilitation, or opting for observation in the wild, responsible whale watching, ethical safaris where animal welfare comes first. It's about rejecting exploitative practices.
Makes sense. So looking ahead now, what does the future hold? Where is tourism heading?
The overwhelming message from the material is that sustainability has to be the future. It's not optional anymore. It's essential for the industry's long-term health.
So more focus on eco-friendly practices, green certifications, carbon neutrality.
All of that. Reducing waste, conserving resources, investing in renewables, genuinely involving local communities in planning and benefits, aiming for carbon-neutral travel eventually. Sustainable growth and widespread ecotourism principles are seen as the path forward.
What about more out there ideas, like space tourism?
Yes. It's emerging. Companies like SpaceX are making it technically possible. It's exciting, a new frontier.
But accessible, ethical.
That's the rub. It's incredibly expensive, so highly exclusive, and the environmental impact of rocket launches for tourism is still a big question mark. So amazing technological innovation, but major accessibility barriers and environmental impact concerns.
And virtual tourism, experiencing places through VR.
That's also growing, using virtual reality or other digital tools to explore remotely.
What are the pros and cons there?
Well, it could allow access for people who can't physically travel or let people visit fragile sites without damaging them. It could potentially reduce the carbon footprint of some travel.
Is it the same?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Can a digital experience ever replicate the feeling, the smells, the sounds, the chance encounters, the authenticity of actually being there? Can hybrid travel really substitute for the real thing? It's a fascinating debate about what travel really means.
It really is. So we've covered a huge amount today, really digging into the many, many sides of travel and tourism based on the material we looked at.
We really have. We saw it as this massive economic force creating wealth and jobs, but also vulnerable and capable of creating inequality.
We looked at the cultural impacts, fostering understanding and preserving heritage, but also risking dilution and commodification.
The environmental story, degrading resources and causing emissions, yet also potentially funding conservation and raising awareness.
The social effects, connecting people and empowering some, while straining communities and sometimes exploiting others.
We saw how technology is just revolutionizing everything, bringing convenience but also new challenges like over-tourism and questions about authenticity.
And we touched on those really important personal benefits, broadening minds, boosting well-being, building skills.
Plus, how it all plays out differently depending on whether you're in a developed, developing, or island nation.
And wrapped up with the ethics of how we travel, and a glimpse into future trends like sustainability and virtual or even space travel. Understanding all these pieces gives you a much clearer, more complete picture of what travel and tourism really entails.
Definitely. It's so much more complex than just going on holiday.
So, thinking about everything we've discussed, all these complex impacts, maybe the big question isn't just, should we travel anymore? Perhaps it's more like, how can we travel in a way that genuinely benefits everyone and everything involved, both now and for the future?
That's a really powerful thought to end on. It puts the responsibility on us, doesn't it?
It does. Something for all of us to think about. Well, that brings us to the end of this deep dive. If you found this discussion helpful or interesting, especially for your English learning, please do be sure to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel.
Thanks for joining us.